Welcome, everybody. My name is Jen. I work at the University of Manchester. I'm leading a project that deploys our 40,000 strong force for change for a better world through applied research and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. The way I see it, this is a really exciting opportunity to affect change for sustainable development whilst enhancing student employability and the overall student experience. We work in partnership. And as you'll see today, I'm offering you an open invitation to be part of this project. So let me explain to you what it's all about. So I believe this project is important, and it's important because our world is in crisis. Students joining our universities and colleges this year will have lived through the warmest 10 years on record. To my mind, there's no longer a question as to whether or not we will see ecological and climatic catastrophe. We are seeing it now. The only question is, how bad is it going to get? Now, I'm sure everybody's aware of the Sustainable Development Goals, which goes some way to address these challenges of the environment and the climate that we are seeing. There are a set of 17 goals, 169 targets that present a framework for a better world for all by 2030. And importantly, they are supposed to be as applicable to Mozambique as they are to Manchester. Now, in my opinion, there is quite a bit of well-directed critique towards the SDGs as a development tool, but the way I see it, they're basically the best that we have at this moment in time. And they're also really interesting, I think, as a teaching tool, because as they have such a broad focus, they enable us to start conversations about sustainability, perhaps from a more holistic and broad angle, perhaps framed around gender inequality or quality education, for example, that appeals to a broader range of ears that perhaps aren't interested in those classic environmental C words of climate and carbon and catastrophe. Now, what we do know is that achieving the SDGs requires partnership. And I've tried to highlight there that not only is partnership key to an ethos of making the sustainable development goals happen, so we're looking for new partnerships at new scales, bringing new actors together, but they're also a discrete goal, Goal 17. And that's what's been recognised by the UN, that achieving the SDGs requires the partnerships of governments, private sector, civil society and citizens alike to make sure that we leave a better planet for future generations. Now, I think missing from that quote is the role of our students. So the SDGs are a call to action. They require new partnerships at multi-scale to affect change, and our students should be part of that. So the way I see it, students at the University of Manchester alone are a 40,000 strong force for positive change. They are the future policymakers, the future professionals, the future carers, the future leaders, and all of the above. And I see it partly my moral imperative as an educator to ensure that our students leave the University of Manchester empowered, equipped, and inspired to recognise their role in the world and how they could affect the change that it requires for their futures and for future generations' futures. And for that reason, I use Education for Sustainable Development as a framework, which, as I'm sure you're aware, aims to empower people to change the way that they think and work towards a more sustainable future together. Now, as of this year, the Advanced HE and the QAA released a new framework for Education for Sustainable Development, really bringing this pedagogy up to date for the challenges that we are facing, and within that, recognising the role of students. The other thing that's quite interesting, I think, about the approach to teaching and learning that I'm going to share with you today is that our students are also very aware of the state of the world through every socioeconomic indicator, and they want to affect change. So work done by the NUS in 2019, based on 6 years of work with then HEA, found that 83% of 6,000 students surveyed want to learn about sustainable development, either as part of their degree or alongside something that they're studying. And that was at both undergraduate and postgraduate levels. Even very pragmatic students, they're not interested in sustainable development, they'll recognise that employers are increasingly asking to see a knowledge of sustainable development in general and the SDGs in particular on the CVs of graduates. But our students, like yours, I'm sure, are busy. They work, they might have caring commitments, hopefully doing a bit of play as well alongside their studies. And to be perfectly honest, I remember the frustration as an undergrad of writing yet another essay that for today's students sit and gather electronic dust on a virtual learning environment. So let me introduce you to this concept of the University Living Lab, and as I say, offer you the invitation to be part of it. To frame the statistics in a little bit of greater detail, students at the University of Manchester are 40,000 strong, and that is potentially a 40,000 strong force who can affect change for sustainable development. Now, Evans et al. 2015 did a few calculations and suggested that if only a quarter of the students of those students studied in and around sustainability, that is an annual 7.5 million hours of study time that could be directed towards solving sustainable development challenges annually. Now, if you scale that up to the predicted 262 million students that are expected to be in higher education by 2025, we reckon that there is somewhere in the region of 40 billion hours of student study time that could be deployed to affect change for sustainable development. Now, even if you factor in a significant margin of error in those calculations, that is a cracking force that could be used for sustainable development. So we are deploying that force through applied research, through our University Living Lab. And let me show you what it looks like. Okay, so our University Living Lab brokers applied research between our students and the organisations that need it. Now, a living lab is a concept which is understood and applied in several different ways in the higher education sector. At its heart, at the core, a living lab aims to establish these new partnerships that connect academic activities such as teaching and learning and research with non-academic partners. So think back to the SDGs and this need for partnership to affect change. A living lab takes a similar approach. They're experimental. It's partnerships across the university and beyond, perhaps through to local communities, businesses, charities, organisations, and so forth. A plethora of literature recognises the range of benefits for the learning experience for students around improving their professional skills, their employability, student retention, and student satisfaction. You get this incredible knowledge transfer opportunity and a real opportunity for external partners to work with internal partners to the benefit of sustainable development, whilst enhancing those partnerships to greater extents. So we've tried to capture this ethos within our living lab. We have over 150 projects, and I'll just show you what that looks like. So 150 projects that are deliberately broad. So these are concept notes, if you like, areas of research that external organisations need to enhance their work. So the projects are designed to be applicable, adaptable to any assessment at any level. And because we are framing these projects through the Sustainable Development Goals, I think they have an interdisciplinary focus that would appeal to most disciplines as well. So at the moment, our projects are largely locally based. We've had Manchester City Council asking our students to analyse their zero carbon 2038 policy, all the way through to research around widening participation at the University of Manchester, and my personal favourites, a beekeeping project in South Manchester. And we also have quite a few desk-based projects as well. Having proven our success locally, we would like to go global with this approach. And as I say, these projects are very, very much adaptable to any academic level, any discipline, any assessment. And our students love it. So I will bring the student voice through to the next couple of slides. And I can give you all sorts of different examples of student feedback where students have said they have really enjoyed this opportunity for something that feels like real, something that feels as though they're putting their assessment into a real world context and affecting change while they do that. We've had 2 students employed by the organisations that they did their research for, and as you'll see momentarily, other students say that they have gained their employment based upon this experience. One of the other things that our platform is enabling us to do is to feature some of our students' reports. And this enables us then to enhance the reach and impact of students' research, because it then the platform becomes an open source of knowledge, and at the same time it's enhancing the student's profile and their employability. To date, we've had students' research about urban health presented at the Rockefeller Center in New York. It has been used to shape council policy, and as I say, I have to talk about my bees again, and it was used to construct a beekeeping project in South Manchester. We're able to work in partnership with our students, our researchers and our organisations, and then we're affecting change for sustainable development. I think it's probably fair to say, but obviously by dint of being undergraduate work, the work can vary in standard. The broad brush approach that we're taking to the project means that external organisations don't need to put in that much time or effort. So these are not designed to be mentored or supervised projects. That can therefore mean that whilst that puts less pressure onto the external organisations, the research may not be that focused towards their original needs. But what we've had quite a few external organisations say is that not only is there something that's useful, but quite often the students' projects open organisations' eyes to a different viewpoint. The interdisciplinary insight brings in new literatures, new ideas, actually enhances their body of work going forward. A way in which we operationalise this approach, so I've piloted this now for 4 years across different courses, but I would highly recommend that students undertake a project proposal before they undertake any research, which of course by default should include a full ethics and risk assessment and present a methodology. Within my teaching, students then also receive written feedback on their proposal, which we then discuss one-to-one, either with myself or with their graduate teaching assistant. So lots of time to talk through the research and frame it together. And as I say, student feedback has been quite staggering actually on this approach to assessment, with a student intern there saying, or a research intern saying that they don't think they would have been able to gain this position if they hadn't had the research experience through this project. And certainly we've had feedback from students that have said their dissertations in their final year have been hugely amplified by this experience, and they felt much more confident to engage their research skills for different assessments. So this idea of partnership essentially underpins the need for the Sustainable Development Goals to affect change and also the Living Lab. And I was playing a little bit around what partnership might mean in this respect. Now, I think any educator worth their weight in chalk dust will be familiar with the Students as Partners literatures from the later 1990s onwards. And it's well recognised. I mean, Jarvis's work, for example, that shows that student-staff partnerships can improve employability of students through the development of skills, confidence, teamworking, and other attributes. Hattie and Boville's work talked about how students working in partnership with staff means that they understand the institution better, which enhances their student experience as they progress through it. I'm sure you're familiar with the diagram in the top left-hand corner there, produced by the Higher Education Academy, which talks about how working with students as partners enhances learning, teaching and assessment. It can feed into curriculum design. It's good for the scholarship of teaching and learning, and supports subject-based research and inquiry. And there's also a quote there from Healy, Flint and Harrington, which talks about how everybody involved in the relationship benefits from working together. All sorts of different examples that I could give you, but what I would argue is missing from all of these advantages of working with students and partners is the examples, the power that students have to affect change beyond the academy, to really apply their skills, to be inspired, to be empowered, to deploy those skills to affect change, in this case for sustainable development. And then that then has knock-on implications. So there's a quote there from Mark Duncan, who's very kind to give us a number of projects for the Living Lab. He works with the Manchester City Council. We have worked quite closely with Mark through the EAUC with a Living Lab approach, and he was good enough to say that this work together has helped him shift how he sees the university as a partner, enabling us to work far more closely together to benefit from the university's expertise and for us to learn from the council in the process. And that's then further enhanced our partnership going forward. And that similar approach could be applied to the plethora of organisations that are feeding into our projects as well. So to try and bring all of that together. So this innovative approach to teaching enhances the student experience while increasing their employability. By deploying our 40,000 strong force for change, and don't forget that's at the University of Manchester alone, we are affecting change for sustainable development and opening up conversations around sustainability. This then enhances student partnerships with us and the university and beyond into the real world, because universities aren't real, in partnership with external organisations. We are generating this open source collection of knowledge, which we hope will be useful and moving on from being very successful locally to expanding our influence globally, we hope. And that's where, like the SDGs, we work in partnership, respecting all knowledges. This project has been an absolute labour of love. I would be delighted if you'd like to share it with us. So if you have any projects, or if you'd like to use any of our projects, or if you know of organisations who might benefit from some free student research power, perhaps you'd like to embed this approach into your teaching and learning, please, I'd be delighted to discuss with you. Don't hesitate to get in touch. Thanks so much for listening to my presentation today.